Hello, in this video we're going to talk about how to create user accounts in Cherwell Service Management. So this should be a fairly short video. We're just going to go through the Cherwell Administrator tool. If you're new to Cherwell, there are two different types of users. One of them is a self-service portal customer or like an end user that you might be supporting in a help desk. They can sign into the self-service portal, and then there's a technician, I would say, like an actual user that uses the Cherwell applications on the desktop or through the technician client in the browser. Now, those users are likely working in your help desk or your other IT department teams to interact with the Cherwell application and manage their work. So these are the users that we're going to be working with in this video. To create a new user or to edit a user, you're going to sign into the Cherwell Administrator tool. So if you're on Cherwell version 9.7, you have this icon right here. Otherwise, you have an orange icon like this one up here. So once you're signed in to the administrator tool, you're going to open the security page and you'll be given a prompt like this or a menu like this, and you'll select edit users. Once you're on the edit users screen, you should have a selector at the bottom where you can filter based on internal Cherwell credentials where you've specified a user ID and password, or Windows or LDAP authenticated users where you've specified a login ID, but Cherwell is going to authenticate through Active Directory. So you can filter between those. This is useful if you need to work with internal Cherwell service accounts when most of your actual users in most corporate environments will be authenticated through Active Directory or single sign-on through ADFS or other systems. If you need to very quickly filter out, oh, where's my Cherwell admin account or this other internal service account, this gives you a very easy way to do that. And consequently, if you're not seeing a user in this list, it might be because you have one of these filters applied. So this is a list of users on Cherwell version 9.7, and I think the last few recent versions you see both the name and the login ID. And if you need to, you can search through users using any of the fields that are marked as full text search, like their name, their email address, their login ID, and they'll actually filter out. So if we type in Andrew, for example, we'll get Andrew Sims. So now when you're going to create a user, if you want to create an internal Cherwell account that just uses a straight login ID and password, you'll just go up here and click Create New User. This part's pretty simple. You enter in a new login ID. For instance, I'll label this one Brian. You select a security group for that user. For instance, are they an administrator or are they IT service desk level 1 or 2? Are they in our manager security group? If you're new to Cherwell, security group is a singular place that determines permissions throughout the system. There is a concept of security groups where you have rights and permissions to various things. And then there's team memberships, which are used for routing and assigning records or work. Um, Contrary to a lot of other systems, team memberships don't really determine permissions in most of the system. Almost all of those are going to come from the security group that you select. So then you'll assign a password for this user account. You do have to enter in the password multiple times. Now, for an internal Cherwell authenticated user that has a password, that's all you need to do up here. The next section is Windows authentication. If you were going to have this user sign in through Active Directory, you would type in their SAM account name or their ID, like their user ID, here. If you're going to sign in through Active Directory, this is actually the only part that's important for that. There is an option to import users from Active Directory, in which case it fills this part out for you. You generally do need to specify a domain unless you only have one domain and you have it set up to default if you don't have one. but generally you want to be specifying a domain under this login ID as well. Now the bottom section here is the user information section. Now you've got a full name, email, phone. These are pretty typical fields that you would fill out. There's other supplementary fields like department, office. These are things that you would just present to a user that would be useful. Like, hey, this person works on this team. Maybe they're a member of this department. Um, Almost none of these are required. You can basically just enter in a name and then save this record, and this user can then sign in. Now you can also assign a user to teams from this Teams tab right here. If you need to add someone to a team, you can open up this tab and just add them to a team. You can give them multiple different team memberships. The first one you select will be marked as their default team, and that one, whatever that user's default team is, will become the team that's selected when they first create a new record. So if I'm on 3 different ones, Cherwell needs to pick one team to lump new tickets that I create under. That's going to be the default team. If you need to switch it, there's a button for that. So that's how we create a user. There's also an import user dialog. Go ahead and save this guy. I apparently don't have a directory set up on this server, but when you use the Active Directory import, well, it went away. We can't actually see all of that here, but when you use the Active Directory import tool, you can search through one or multiple domains, and there's generally a field where you can search for users by name. Now this becomes a starts with search, where you put in the first few characters of someone's name and then hit enter, and it will actually return a list of users that match what you put in there. And the user that you select, you can then specify a security group and the domain that's going to be entered on their user account. And then when you click OK, it would generally create their user account, fill in their login ID, and then fill in their name and other information from Active Directory according to the way that their user, or according to the way that you have that object mapped to Active Directory in your system. But that's outside the scope of this video. So that's how you create a user account. Um, Maybe at some point in the future we'll get a more detailed import from Active Directory, but it is fairly straightforward. And also now, if we'd like, we can open up Cherwell Service Management and we can sign in as this user to make sure that they work. We are in this environment. Also, yes, Screencast-O-Matic is giving me many different error messages recently, and I don't know why. I've tried reinstalling it. Alright, so in this instance, our user ID is Brian. We'll enter in our password. And there we go, we get prompted for a role, which means we've signed in. It's checked which roles are available for our security group, and now we're able to log in. So here in a second, we should see the tool pop up, and our login was successful. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments section below.